Hello, all. Good morning to most, I believe. Some different time zones may be a little earlier in the afternoon. But welcome to this particular session. We're going to be trying to start a conversation, facilitate a little bit around some AWP training experiences, possibly some AWP training nightmares, some do's and don'ts, if you will. And I do have some slides to help seed the conversation, but I'm hoping that more than anything, y'all here will offer up several things in discussion and then join the discussion. So I'm going to unmute all of everybody's mics, not physically unmute them, but give you the ability to share your thoughts and unmute yourself as we go forward. So let me see, we've got a few people that have joined us so far, and I appreciate that. So let me do a quick introduction for myself. My name is Robin Mikaelsson. I'm the president of the AWP University. We specialize primarily in AWP training and facilitating AWP training sessions and corporate training enablement, if you will, for AWP. My background is I've been in AWP since before it was called AWP. I helped build the original COA model for workplace planning, come on about 20 years ago now. And I've been involved in CII since about 2006, and I've helped to develop the CII models for AWP over the last 15 years. Of my involvement with them and moderating and chairing multiple of the research teams. So I've been around AWP for a little bit, kind of in the room where it happened, I like to say, the entire time through its inception. And going on about a year ago now, I formed the AWP University. I've been consulting in AWP for many, many years. And we formed the university as a central house for true AWP training. So I thank you all for joining us here. And again, our topic today for the session is AWP training nightmares. So in the past, we've been trying to develop AWP training methodologies on our own within our organizations, and we've ran into some problems and into some issues. So I'm going to start right away with polling the audience and seeing what somebody might want to volunteer as a possible do's or don'ts for AWP training. It doesn't have to be all negative. I don't want this to be a completely negative situation of this happened and it was terrible. But so we're looking at it from a point of do's and don'ts as well. But who wants to share possibly a story about their training experiences, either good or bad? Somebody want to get the conversation started? I have full view to see if you raise your hands, or I've also given you the ability to unmute yourself. So if you choose to share, just feel free to unmute your mic and share with the group. All right, so let's take a look at a couple slides. So I have brought a few in just to help seed the conversation, and I want this to be a conversation. That's kind of the intent of these networking sessions, is to have a conversation amongst us, not to just have me present. I don't want this to seem commercial for the AWP University. The idea here is for us to talk about training issues possibly that we've had in the past, and share some experiences on how we can possibly remedy those types of situations in the future. So let's start with a typical issue with training in the industry and some things that I've seen in the past. One of them being an AWP training nightmare of training provided by groups outside of the AWP community. Now that sounds funny, but there's lots of consultancy agencies in the industry that are not highly involved in any of the governing bodies. Construction Owners Association of Alberta, you saw our friend Yogesh speaking both at the opening and closings of our sessions. Great guy, brings a lot of wealth and knowledge forward from COA. I'm a member of that same committee, and I have been since its inception nearly 20 years ago now. And we do a lot of good work within COA. I'm also a member of the Construction Industry Institute, as is my company, We are also a registered educational provider, and I'm a registered instructor with CII. And if you're a member of the AWP community of practice, so that is Lloyd's groups, they are worldwide, all over the world. Those individuals have a greater grasp, I think, of what is actually happening in AWP and what is the true facts and the developments, if you will. The original 272 documentation is not all inclusive of everything that we would consider all things AWP, if you will. And I think that in order to stay on top of the AWP methodologies, you kind of have to be part of the community. And there's a lot of organizations out there that are outside of AWP that are taking some basic literature and trying to train organizations. And I think it can cause some issues. So again, just an item to start to bait the audience to have some discussions about possible situations and what good experiences or bad experiences that you've had in AWP training, and some of the things that you'd like to see in the industry for training, and what it is that maybe you require as an organization, and to help. And I'm here to help to give you some of those resources or some of my experience possibly. I've been around a little bit, but if I don't have an answer, I'm sure some of the other people joining our session here today might. So that's just an example of a possible scenario. Let's look at another one, and we'll start discussion. So let me ask this question to the audience first. Do you believe that an AWP practitioner or an AWP trainer requires some construction experience? Do you think that they should have construction experience, or could they be purely academic? Or let me pull the audience. Who has some feedback on possibly some AWP training experiences that they've had in the past, or wants or issues? I've given you all the ability to unmute your mic, so feel free to unmute and share your ideas with us. Anybody got something they want to add? All right, Roy, what you got for us?
No, I was just going to agree with you. I think you do need to have somebody that's got some experience at site. I mean, you got to have an idea to know where you're going at the end of the day. So I think it's definitely beneficial from that perspective. What's interesting though is I think you also have to have some experience back into the engineering realm and the tool set. So you kind of find a hybrid component there, because not only do you need to know where you're going, to an extent you need to know where you're coming from at the same time.
Very well put, and I would completely agree with that. I think that having engineering knowledge to understand where data is coming from. We just sat through some great sessions on data, the usages, the needs for it, who uses it, those kinds of scenarios. That tied to understanding the end user, right? I mean, what is AWP all about? The end result of AWP is the smooth transition of information from the engineering group to facilitate construction in the field in a proper manner, in a planned manner. So when it comes to field understanding and understanding exactly how those IWPs or the installation work packages are going to be used in the field, I think is important. If the instructors never have boots on, as long as they have somebody who has, or maybe there's some dual presentation, because as Roy was mentioning, you got to know both sides of it and have to walk both sides of it, which is very true. Thanks for sharing, Roy. Anybody else have something to add? Or doesn't have to be on this specific topic of construction expertise. It could be others. All right, well, let me go to the next one here, and I think this one will hopefully spark some conversation. The idea here is, for a long time in AWP, and I was guilty of this way back when as well, beware of the dreaded single bucket overview. We like to say, okay, well, have you taken an AWP Fundamentals course, and do you know everything about AWP now? The truth is that, a lot of these are drinking from a fire hose, right? Some of the AWP courses, if you're not prepared for them, or you take a week-long organizational course on AWP And at the end of it, you're like, okay, well, how the heck does that pertain to me? And what does that mean to me? And how do I work within it? Or you just picked up maybe 10% of it. A lot of these, overwhelming, dreaded single bucket overviews that I like to call them. And as I say in the bottom of this slide, don't crush the will of the student by overwhelming them. Anybody got some experience with possible, large amounts of data in training that was possibly too much for a student, or somebody else wants to add some anecdotes about possibly some issues with other aspects of training that they've seen in the past? We're not here to be all negative, but we're here to just have a conversation about best methods, if you will, possibly for training. So anybody want to share some experience or based on the slide that's active now? No, because there's supposed to be a conversation. All right. So, hey, there you go. I think we got to take it. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Mamie with Jacobs. I think the biggest thing we've got to do with training is give people the real world examples, and then actually have them do some touch, have touch, right, and feel of it. They have to see it. It's not just present it. They have to get into the software and look at it and stuff like that. I think if we don't afford them those opportunities to, one, see how it was really used and actually use the tool themselves, it's just, they'll come out of the training and be, forgot everything they've already learned that week. So,
right.
Unless
yeah, so I think that's a great example. So where there's actual physical examples or exercises that can be touched and felt and discussed and gone through, versus the being spoken at for the whole time, right? I think that's a good point. I think that's where you're getting with that, right, Mimi? I think that's an excellent point. Practical exercise is key to learning and understanding IWP and work package management in general.
Yes, that's where I was going.
Excellent. I think that's a great ad. Anybody else? Thank you, Mamie. All right, let's keep going and take a look at maybe another one here. How about from the basis of role-based training? So Mamie brought up a really good point about exercises and making sure it's not that training classes are not just spoken at the student, that there is involvement from the student. Have any of you experienced true role-based training before, or that ability to take a training course that's specific to your job orientation? Let's say if you're a project controls lead, or you're an actual work phase planner, or you're in the process of becoming an AWP coordinator. They all have very, very different job descriptions and very, very different tasks within the AWP environment. What's some of the feel about some of that role-based training versus just the whole overview, and then trying to cherry pick from that what exactly you have to do within that? Maybe?
Well, to me, it's like if we can get other people to sit in the other people's roles, they can see how the information is going to be used by that individual versus how they're used to using the information. So if we've got engineers that can play a superintendent role during the training, then they can learn how the data is used by that party and vice versa. So we get that well-rounded exposure of the team to how the data is used.
I like that. So more than just training an individual and what's responsible to them, some also specific training so that they get the feel of their surroundings and how maybe they impact others' jobs as well. I think that's a great way to look at it as well, not just from a single student's roles, but doing some role playing in general for others to be able to understand what maybe that superintendent or that AWP coordinator or the workplace planners themselves are actually experiencing, and why they require some of the data or some of the tasks that maybe your job position requires. I think that's an excellent ad as well. Anybody else?
Yeah, Robin, I'm just curious. We've done some of these things for our behavior-based safety programs and training. but I haven't seen that for AWP. Is that something you've done from practical experience or see regularly, or is it just an observation of what would work best?
Within the AWP University, I'm trying not to keep this too salesy, that we're supposed to more talk about just the basis, but it's a very pointed question, and it's very adapt. Yeah. Within the AWP University, we focus most of our training around that. Our level 1 basic overview training that we offer is more about how to spell AWP. Once you leave level 1 into our level 2 and 3, then you're all about role-based training learning paths, so specific to job positions. Because there is a lot of information to learn in AWP. And if you ask a single student to learn everything across all the different job positions, because remember, when you really start looking at AWP, it becomes a central hub to just about everything on the project, right? Everybody's got a role to play. But I don't think everybody can learn everything there is to know about all positions. I completely agree with Mamie. I think that there should be some close interaction, cross-training from roles where, the work-face planner understands how they affect the superintendent and vice versa. So some role-playing between them makes ultimate sense. And we do a lot of that within the university, where it's all about specific job positions and learning paths based on the position that you either strive for or that you're actually holding now. And we feel it works very well. And it may have been a bit of a pointed question on the screen, but we've based a lot of our curriculum directly around that to ensure that we don't give that student that unfortunate drinking from a fire hose experience, that when they leave, they're actual practitioners of their position. And I think it's important. Roy, have you experienced that at all in the industry, where it's any specific job-based training, or has it been all pretty much overview type training?
Yeah, it's from my experience, it's predominantly been an overview perspective with some surgical or very targeted aspects relative to the role itself, but nothing that's really holistic across the board. And in fact, my experience matches what you've got at the bottom of the screen, which is how does somebody else's problem affect me?
Right.
Thanks.
And that's unfortunate. The mindset of a lot of students post AWP training quite often is that, okay, that all sounds great, and I think we can implement it, and I really want to bring this back to my organization, but where do I start? What does the different roles entail? What does my role entail? What's my basic checklist? What's my responsibilities? Is there a RASI chart for this? Like, where do I go from here? Seems to be a pretty common question post a lot of AWP training, and I think it's important we tackle that present and future. Yeah, good add.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's just the timing of the execution of projects as well feed into that. I mean, the bulk of your construction teams are mobilized after a bulk of your engineering is well down the road to affect this positive change, right?
Yeah, and I think you touched on something there, timing. I think it's important when you're taking training also to tie that training and tie your employees' training to specific timings, meaning that a student who takes even the best role-based training or specific training to their organization, excuse me, is not going to retain possibly a lot of that knowledge unless they actually go back and execute it in practice, right? And being able to go back to their organization and say, this is what I've learned. This is where I think that my duties lie, and actually experience some of that. If they take training and then never use it, or don't use it for a year, often I think a lot of that retention is lost. Is that kind of where you're going, Roy, on some of the timing as well?
Yeah, I think you've got the obviously the just-in-time training is important. And speaking of losing some of that information, I think between 2020 and 2021, it feels like a 10-year time period to a lot of folks. So it's certainly relevant observation there. But I was thinking of the core mobilization of the teams as well. So you've got, when it comes to managing the data aspects and getting the alignment for this to pass through the tool sets to be consumed at the construction level, you've got your stakeholder influence, as you know, decreases the longer a project goes on. So if we haven't seen that this is tackled appropriately early on enough, your engineering design teams and your procurement teams have taken decisions that are hard to unwind if you don't have the construction teams engaged early enough.
Yeah, and I think that's a great aspect also, is timely training, not just from a student being able to use it for retention, but for if you're doing project-based training. I mean, doing a project controls-based training module for AWP after project controls is already initiated, all the setup for a project is kind of like trying to close the gate after the horse has already left, right?
Exactly. That's exactly. You worded it much better than I did. Thank you.
But yeah, it can be problematic, and it happens a lot, right? I teach a class on P6 development. I don't teach how to use P6, but I teach how to create WBS structures and templates to satisfy the AWP requirements. So how to build a WBS structure that satisfies the proper level 1, 2, and 3. I think the Path of Construction session yesterday from Frankie, if you sat through that, he kind of touched on that a little bit as far as WBS structures and how you initiate them to better structure your project controls environment for AWP. And, you know, just like we're talking here, if you take a class on that after you've already got your baseline schedule, you're not going to reverse that. You're just going to basically understand the mistakes you made, but not be able to put it into practice. So I think, yeah, that on a timely basis, right, I think that's a very good add. Darren, I saw your mic come open there a little while ago. Did you have an addition for us?
Yeah, no, just I'm not. This is new to me, AWP, so I'm early in the journey here from Rio Tinto. So just inquiring about the training modules you may have or may not have, like with the influence of the managers in your business. Do you actually have how to do that? How to change management in a business to actually accept this sort of philosophy going forward? Is there any sort of modules or curricula in the training for AWP there?
We do have one actually around change management and acceptance of change. It's actually taught by one of our guest instructors, Fernando Espana. I don't know if you've
yeah, I heard him yesterday.
Yeah, he's the president of ConstructX. So, within the AWP University, there's myself and about 3 other main instructors, and then we've got several instructors that guest speak. Lloyd, the organizer here, actually guest speaks once in a while. He does a scalability version of a course for us, teaching how to use AWP in different sizes of projects. He's an expert on scalability. And Fernando does a course on change management from the point of organizational structure change and acceptance, that whole who moved my cheese type basis, if you're familiar with that book. Yeah, that's a great addition. And I think some of those soft skills in AWP are highly required to understand. We also teach a soft skills for the craft and for the work phase planner basis, which, one thing that I've noticed over the 15, 20 plus years that I've been involved in AWP is that work phase planners run a tightrope. And that tightrope is between control of the field and understanding the humility that they are actually building the plan and executing the plan of the foreman and general foreman, not vice versa. Understanding that they're in a pull type environment, not a push environment. And what I mean by that is that the craft is pulling the required information and asking for what they're going to do next versus being pushed down from the planners as to thou shalt execute this next kind of scenarios. And the soft skills of not only the change management, we do that, but the soft skills of how not to put yourself in a position unbecoming to your position, being that you're not force feeding, you're actually being supportive. Those kind of soft skills, I think, are extremely important in training. And I thank you for that ad, Darren. And we do have that as one of our modules. Within the university, we got about 64 different modules when it comes to AWP. We've broken up all our training into about 2-hour segments, 2 to 4 hour segments for the purposes of being able to mix and match for that role-based training that we were talking about earlier that's still on the screen, for specific individuals that need to know certain things, because not everybody needs to know absolutely everything. And if you try to learn everything, you're probably gonna burn yourself out on training for it. So thanks for that, Darren. You
For sure. Thanks for that.
any other additions, experiences that you've had with training? Doesn't have to be necessarily from the slides. The slides are just to start conversation. This is supposed to be just a conversation amongst us, and so far we've had some really good input. Who's had an experience with formal training in the past, or creating it within your own organization? I see Mark just popped in here. Mark has taken training from a few different organizations, including my own. So how's your experiences been? What's your pros and cons? What do you think are some hot button items? I know you're not scared to share. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, can you hear me, Ryan?
I can, but yeah.
So I'll be specific in that at KBR, and this was years ago before AWPU, we were trying to, we did, not tried, we succeeded in jumping ahead to competition with AWP. When we went out to bid, the clients, the bigwigs, the owners said that, hey, you're ahead of the competition in terms of AWP. But a part of how we did that is we did get support, and we did go external for that, and that was before AWPU. So we hired Constructex at the time, where Robin Mikaelsson was there at the time with Fernando and Ted Wiseman and others. But there was internal pushback, and I'm sure you know about it. But well, we can do this ourselves. What if we hire Constructex to drive the process to completion? That's why, because we agreed to pay Constructex a certain amount of money to do this. But what helped the most isn't just AWP in itself, but was to implement the process across the entire company. I mean, there was one day where you and I were hosting a meeting. You were doing a presentation, and we had a room of about 8 VPs. So it helped to have an external resource to help jumpstart your process. And then one of the good things about Constructex and AWPU is that one of the things I liked about the class that you did is that there's a lot of open discussion. It wasn't a mandate that Robin Mikaelsson says you have to do it this way, period. It was a discussion to say, do you want the IDPs in the schedule or not? Do you split it up by rule spread or not? So there's different ways of doing things, and it's good to see Constructex and AWPU acknowledge that every company has their own process.
I think that's a great addition, Mark, it's not on one of my conversation starter slides here, but I think that is key in understanding with your AWP training. We teach a course on AWP process overlay development, which is, how do you integrate with what you do well today?
Robin?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I apologize for the interruption, but we are 2 minutes over our time already, and we'll have to close this webinar out. So hopefully some of these individuals will catch you in the virtual hallway soon.
All right, excellent. I could talk all day about this stuff. It's great stuff. Thanks for everybody who
have a good day, everyone.
And gave opinions. It's great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Roy.